Too. Hi, everyone. This is Malka Shaw. I am a licensed clinical social worker in the state of New Jersey and New York and Florida. I am so sorry and I apologize for the technical difficulties. I hope people are here and they can join us. I want to first of all thank the administrators of Never Forget Jewish Lives Matters for inviting the Kesher Shalom Project into their group to do the Wednesday luncheon workshops. I want to give a special shout out to Sharon Cates, who is amazing and awesome. You can message her again, Sharon Cates, the administrator, if you're having a hard time finding me right here. Okay, so I apologize. We're going to just take a step back. My name, I first want to thank the administrators, and then I want to explain that I am here representing Kesher Shalom Projects. We are a group of therapists who came together after the October 7th attacks and started providing all different services to primarily training therapists, and now we're here for the community to support in education and mental health, etc. Okay, great. I hope people are able to follow us and they're along with us. Okay, great. I first want to take a minute to mention our sponsors. OK Clarity. OK Clarity is the premier online directory for Jewish people to go ahead and match up with therapists, mental health providers, wellness, nutritionists, etc. So thank you again to OK Clarity. Okay, so as I said before, my name is Malka Shaw. I have been in the fields of mental health for over 25 years. I've had a private practice in the state of New Jersey for close to 16 years at this point, and I specialize in trauma, women's issues, and couples and marriage counseling as well. If you want to get in touch with me, my links and all my information is below. The We just launched the Kesher Shalom website, and that link is below, and OK Clarity's link is below. I want to take a minute to wish everybody who's Jewish that's following along with us. I want to wish everybody a happy Hanukkah as well. So let's talk about why we're here. Before I could even get into trauma, I want to tell everybody a little bit from my point of view of what was going on for me in this particular time period. On October 7th, because I am observant and I refrain from media on the holidays, all of a sudden we were at synagogue and these police officers were coming in trying to give extra protection, and we all got little bits of news about what's going on. Little bits of news, but we knew in that moment something happened in Israel and it was big, and there were threats to the Jewish communities in America. That's all we knew. And in that moment, I knew everything was going to change. I didn't know how. I woke up that morning actually with like a feeling in my head, but something has changed. When I finally was able to take a look at what happened on the media, my heart dropped. I heard the news of the brutal and savage attacks on October 7th, and it was the most horrific thing that I've ever seen in my lifetime. And that includes being in New York City on 9/11. Yes, I was in New York City on 9/11, and I actually was working with Red Cross and FEMA helping debrief the first responders, and I was there in New York City. This was one of the worst things that I have ever experienced. But what was worse than actually hearing the news of October 7th was the silence. The silence. The world went silent. In New York, everybody was supportive, but everybody is silent. And then we have all the ensuing aftermath of the rise of anti-Semitism and all the things you guys have been posting in this group. So just like you, I've been feeling overwhelmed and pain and fear and the betrayal for people who I may have thought were my friends and allies. And we as a Jewish people, we have been getting gaslighted on a macro level. And all of this is what's leading up into our communal trauma. So before we can really delve into what Jewish trauma is, I want to take a step back with you guys, and I want to define what trauma actually means. So trauma is anything that could make you feel out of control or unsafe. That's the basic definition of trauma. It's when you have that feeling. So this particular trauma that we're experiencing is what we call an active trauma because it's ongoing. The war is ongoing, everything is ongoing. We don't really know what's happening. And just like in COVID, we all experienced what we call a collective trauma. That's when the whole world was going through the lockdown together, and there was a lot of fear. But because this is personal and this is attack on specific people, we are labeling this a communal trauma. And just like any trauma, it gives you that time that we feel unsafe or out of control. And it's not actually what happens, but it's how our it's not actually what happens on the outside, but it's how our subjective experience of the trauma. And that's why two people like you and I, we could be in the same exact car accident or in the same fire, and one of us can have a completely different response. One of us could be completely overwhelmed, shut down, and the other one could be more resilient. We all react to trauma very, very differently because it's not really about what's happening on the outside of us, but it's what's happening on the inside. Trauma is this wound of the body, the mind, and the spirit. It's extremely complicated and it's often very misunderstood. Okay. So I want to, before I go on, I just want to say it affects all the body, the mind, and the spirit. But let's not forget the Jewish spirit, the Jewish neshama is very strong and we will survive. But when you have this trauma that something happens, it's like a switch, right? Like a switch just goes off in our head. That switch is actually in the brain, and it's a part of the brain called the amygdala. And that's how our body can't necessarily control itself because the amygdala is connected to the vagus nerve, and the vagus nerve goes all the way down, and that's why we can have these different effects in our stomach and our back, headaches, because our body is hardwired for survival. We have a physical response in our body when we feel threatened emotionally or physically. That's why emotions can get overwhelmed and we can get overloaded. And then when that happens, we just sort of like disconnect from ourselves. We can disconnect from ourselves, from other people. We can enter what we call the fight, flight, or freeze modes or submissive modes. But what you really just want to understand is the somatic response to trauma is really what we call the mind body connection. The mind and the body are, and these are some, these are some of the things that we're really getting a better understanding of in the last decade or so. When I was involved in 9/11, we really focused more on the cognitive and the mind and the brain part of it and the thought process. But now we understand that we have to really work on both pieces together. Excuse me. Because even when the event is over, even when this traumatic event is over, which we know the situation with the Jewish people is ongoing and we're in active trauma, but even when this event is over, the trauma, it stays in our body. And it can be very difficult to be able to respond in the present moment. Every time we go through a trauma, it can change us and it can distort our worldview, our self view, or even if it's not, it can really distort us and it can change things. But with proper treatment, with proper treatment, it really can make you stronger and more resilient to the next things in life. But without it, we can sort of get destroyed. So again, I want to really just reiterate that everybody reacts to trauma differently. There is no right and there's no wrong. And the main things that I want you to take away is that trauma on top of trauma on top of trauma on top of trauma without proper treatment could really make you feel very overwhelmed and disconnected and lead into some very bigger issues here. Sometimes we experience little t traumas. So for us as a Jewish people right now, that's seeing a very upsetting post. For me, it was seeing the congressional hearings of the finest educational system saying, depending on what context, is it okay to say they want to murder me and my people? You add that with another lower T, with another lower T, and guess what? You have a trauma. So trauma on top of trauma just keeps without it getting without it being addressed properly can lead to something bigger. Okay, thank you so much. So what does that look like for us, and what can we do about that, right? So what does that look like? So you could be experiencing these kind of symptoms that affect our ability to self-regulate, affect our ability to experience life to its fullest. So some of the things I want people to look out for is hyper arousal, meaning you start to either feel numb or you start to feel a little bit like everything is going to bother you and you're just on edge all the time. These are some of these things. These are some of these things that people do experience with trauma. Okay. Denial. Some people go into denial mode. Some people go into shutdown mode. we have to look at, are you having the inability to complete your activities of daily life? Is it affecting your ability to work? Is it affecting your ability to get to the grocery store? If you have a caregiver of young kids, is it affecting your ability to provide proper childcare? Are you having difficulty thinking clearly? Are you feeling overwhelmed and have these intense emotional swings? Are you feeling fatigued, sleep deprived? Are you experiencing intrusive thoughts, brain fog, not able to think clearly, delusional thinking, or one of the things that I really want to point out is trauma is not always necessarily the root of the problem, but it could act like a magnifying glass. I use this a lot when I was working with people over COVID. People would say, well, COVID caused this. No, sometimes it's a magnifying glass for relapse of previous issues to come back up and resurface. Remember that problem or that issue you thought you worked on, you thought you were better at? Guess what? When your body is stressed and it's protecting itself because you're in trauma and you're in survival mode, it's going to come back up. And we call it the magnifying glass effect. So that could be something extreme to the point of addicts returning to their addictions. It could be something where you overeaters start to eat, undereat, it comes back up. So those are some of the things that we just really want to work out. So when we talk about trauma, there's many different impacting factors like previous trauma, your value systems, your support things. The most important thing to help somebody overcome trauma is to have somebody and a support system that's going to validate you. Without validation, your symptoms are only going to increase. So what happened to us as Jews? Are people validating our experience? Is the world gone crazy on social media and saying that Jewish women deserve what happened on October 7th? The worst thing you could do is not validate a trauma. So I'm here to validate your experience and what you are going through. Okay. Thank you so much for everybody. I just got a notification that a lot more people have joined in. I'm not going to go back with the material, but I just want to welcome everybody that joined in. Again, I want to remind everybody that this is Never Forget Jewish Lives Matters. Thank you so much to our administrators for coordinating this with Kesher Shalom Projects. Kesher Shalom Projects. Kesher means connection, Shalom means peace. It's a group of therapists that got together to respond after the October 7th attacks. It initially started as training, a support place for training Jewish therapists on working through their issues while they're working along clients. And then it really blew up into continuing ed courses, training therapists on helping clients with this type of trauma that I just presented, and helping them really understand the Jewish culture and the Jewish experience. And again, my name is Malka Shaw. I am a licensed clinical social worker in New Jersey, New York, and Florida. My information is right below in the chat. You have my website, malkashaw.com. You have Kesher Shalom's website down below. And our sponsor again is OK Clarity, which is the premier directory for the Jewish community to help them find people in mental health, wellness, nutrition, etc. If myself or somebody from my team is not able to help you out and you need assistance, we highly recommend going to okclarity.com. Okay. So now we get to the crux of what is Jewish trauma and what does that mean? And how is Israel and Zionism, how is that all created to our sense of safety and our sense of concern? Okay. So let's talk about Israel. Israel was created after the Holocaust. The Holocaust was obviously one of the most detrimental things that any of us has heard about. And it was there and set there to protect us. So when we talk about trauma as a place, as something that, our brain has that click, when something is off, Israel represents that safetyness. It's that foundation of safety. And let's talk about Zionism. What does Zionism mean? Because people keep saying all these terrible things about Zionism. I hate the Zionists. Zionism, as we see in the holiday of Hanukkah, has existed for thousands and thousands of years, even long before the birth of Islam. Zionism existed way before Theodor Herzl. It's actually in our Psalms, in our Jewish text. It just simply means the Jewish people's desire to go back to our indigenous homeland. That's all it simply means. It doesn't mean we are going to kick other people out. It doesn't mean that we can't live peacefully with other people. It's just a philosophy that Jews have the right to safety and have their own homeland so that the atrocities that happened after the Holocaust don't happen again. Now, not every Jew is a Zionist, and not every Jew believe, and some people don't necessarily believe that the land has to be Israel. So when everybody is attacking Israel and calling Zion and saying terrible things, saying that Zionists or this or that, it can shake us to our core. It shakes me to the core because I'm a proud Zionist. I always grew up with the values of that. So just having the knowledge that there's people out there who do not believe that we have the basic human right to safety, that's going to shake us to the core, and that's going to cause another level of trauma. And then we add up what we call intergenerational trauma into the picture. Intergenerational trauma is that when trauma can go, we're now understanding that research talks about how the stress hormones can be passed on genetically and internal, and it can also affect parental attachment. Parental attachment can really impact our personalities as we grow up. So we have several thousand years of persecution, slavery, all leading up to this cycle of intergenerational trauma builds within the core of our DNA as a Jewish people. So you have all these different pieces. Everybody here, let's take a moment of, to let's talk about our history and our holidays. We always like to joke. They tried to kill us, we survived, or God saved us. Let's eat, and now we eat. That's the story of Hanukkah. That's the story of Purim. That's the story of Passover. That's the story of our people. That's our heritage. They're going to try and come and get us. Um, and so now it's not necessarily funny because it just continues to build up this level of intergenerational trauma. So when we talk about trauma is on layered, on layered, on layered, this history adds up with the threat of our foundation of safety, and we can get to a place of really feeling those symptoms that we discussed earlier. So there's three A's to remember to trauma and recovery. There's acceptance, there's attitude, and there's action. So in a situation like this, what can we accept? We're going to accept it. We could just accept that we're powerless and we can only do what we could do. And then we have to come to a place and an attitude of, okay, this is what I could do. I've accepted that this is going on. What can we do? It might mean that we have to accept that we are powerless. It might be that our power is writing blogs, our power is on social media, our power is in all the amazing programs that have come together in terms of like supporting Israel and the orphans and the families. And then we go into action. And action is going to look very different for different people. For me, this is my fight song, right? When we talked about freeze flight, I think doing this traumas and being involved in Kesher Shalom has been my fight song. And it's been something that has helped me cope by helping everybody else. So everyone is going to have a different reaction. So we're going to end with a few quick things that we could do in the moment. But I would be remiss to not talk about social media warnings with you. We have to be very careful about how much input as mental health professionals, we are asking people to not watch the live footage of October 7th of the actual torture and the actual and how they were taking the hostages. We need to be educated. We need to understand what's going on, but to keep watching these things on relapse. I mean, again, we learned them from 9/11. People got a secondary level of trauma by just watching it over and over again. It's very critical that we take time to unplug to replug, meaning everyone should take an hour or two a day just away from, which is ironic because I'm talking to you on Facebook Live. For the people that are joining us that are Sabbath observant, we do that every week for 24 hours, for 25 hours. It's really critical to our mental health that we can just take time away from technology. It's also really important to get our body moving, get outside, get some exercise, stretch yourself. Again, when we talked about actions look different for everybody else. For some people, it's journaling. If you happen to be artistic and the arts, music, and you want to take it out in the creative avenue, that's amazing. If you want to take it out in community service, that's amazing. For everybody, actions can look differently, but please just don't isolate yourself. The other thing that's really important is mindfulness and breath work. Okay, so my colleagues will be definitely discussing that in the workshops to follow me. And those are really important things to be mindful of. But I'm going to leave you with a two quick things, and then I'll answer one or two questions. So the two quick things I want to leave you with is the simplest and easy thing that anybody could do for themselves. We train EMT workers to do it. You teachers, you could do this with your kids in school. Again, we were talking about this whole concept of trauma, how it like makes you feel very disconnected from yourself. It could be you're stuck in the past or you're super fearful of the future, but you're not able to be right here and in the present. So one of the quickest, easiest things we do is called the 5 4 3 2 1. We just have to take a deep breath in and out, and we focus on 5 things we could see, 4 things we could hear, 3 things we could touch, 2 things we could smell, 1 thing we could taste. And you ask yourself, or you ask the person you're doing with it to do this with you. It takes a minute to slow you down and grabs you right back here in the moment. And then in this moment, in this place, watching me right now, you're safe. Obviously, that's a very quick and easy one, and that's not going to really solve all the bigger problems. But what we want to do is we have a free gift for everybody that's watching. And what that is the therapists of Kesher Shalom Projects have all recorded themselves, thanks to my amazing associate Lisa Mustard and her podcast. She is the Therapy Show podcast. She has recorded all the amazing therapists that are in the lineup, and we will be doing, and we have these different guided meditations, grounding exercises, and they're available for you to just download and can be helpful for you, whether or not the stress is even related to this. So please, again, look below in the box below, and there's a link. You sign up for the Kesher Shalom newsletter, and you will get a link automatically to these downloads. They're excellent, free, almost like mini free therapy sessions where we could just guide you. You could do it in the privacy of your own home. We're really happy and honored that we could do this for our Jewish community. So the one question that people always like to ask me is, well, how do I know what I'm feeling is normal, and how do I know when I need to check in with a professional? Hold on a second. Sharon has asked me to repeat the 5 4 3 2 1. Thank you, Sharon. So the 5 4 3 2 1 again is you just want to take a deep breath in and a deep breath out, and you want to say 5 things you could see, 4 things you could hear, 3 things you could touch, 2 things you could smell, and 1 thing you could taste. It's very simple. We go through the 5 different senses, and we don't think about it. Makes us focus right here in this moment, and that kind of keeps us grounded here in the moment. Again, please click below to our free gifts. That is an amazing opportunity for you to have these takeaway gifts for you to do at home. Okay, so how do we know? How do we know when we need to be checking with a professional and what I'm experiencing is normal? So number one, your experience is your experience, and it's absolutely normal. But we talk about frequency, duration, and intensity. Frequency, duration, and intensity. Are these symptoms happening so frequently? And how long are they lasting? And how intense are they? Are they affecting your ability to work? Are they affecting your interpersonal relationships? Are they affecting your ability to perform your average daily activities? If it's getting in the way, these intrusive thoughts, the shutdown, the fighting, if it's getting in the way of that in terms of frequency, duration, and intensity, it's okay. I know a lot of us Jews out here, we have a lot of shtick about seeing a therapist. Everybody, you can use a check-in every once in a while. Listen, if you all of a sudden grew this crazy rash on your arm, you're not going to go have a dermatologist look at it. It's a normal thing. Everybody could use professional help at some stage of their life. I've been to therapy. All my therapist friends have been to therapy, and so on. So again, if myself or somebody from my team is not able to assist you, go ahead and get on to okclarity.com. OK Clarity is our sponsor. OK Clarity is the premier website and directory for the Jewish community to be connected to not just Jewish professionals, but professionals that are sympathetic and understand the Jewish world and culture, and they want to work with the Jewish clients. Thank you so much from Never Forget Jewish Lives Matter. Thank you so much from Kesher Shalom Projects. And again, one more time, my name is Malka Shaw. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I have been in the field of mental health for over 25 years. I know, but I'm magically 25. I have had a private practice for 16 years in the state. I see people in person in New Jersey, but I'm available telehealth to New York and Florida. I work with couples. I work with women going through a lot of maternal wellness and the struggle of working women, single women, dating, and trauma. A lot of trauma. I am an EMDR therapist. You can, if you don't know what that is, my website's right below. Take a look at my website. Take a look at Kesher Sholom's website. Please sign up for our newsletter. We'll have other events happening. Again, thank you so much. And next Wednesday, we will have my amazing colleague, Lisa Mustard, talk about how do you talk about all this stuff with our kids? This is a really complicated area. Again, this is hard. What we're going through is hard. I'm experiencing, and it's really, really hard for me. It's really hard. And it's time to take care of ourselves as an individual so that we could take care of our community. Because again, I think the hardest part is that silence, the silence from people, the attitude of the universities, the silence we're hearing from women's rights organization. Because what did I say? One is the number one thing that helps somebody get through a trauma is having support and validation. So the silence, it's like deafening, and it just hits us in the heart. And with that in the heart, I want to just give everyone a blessing with Hanukkah. As you light your menorah tonight, take a deep breath and just take a deep breath and say, there is going to be light. Because guess what? We've always survived, and we're going to survive. And we're going to have a mindset of survival and resilience. Happy Hanukkah, and looking forward to hearing that the hostages are all returned home and safe. Have a great day.